up a good question. Thank you for asking that, Rich. Explain the overall purpose. The overall purpose of doing this is how you create a project schedule. If you go back to the time management processes, you had a process called sequence activities. The process of sequence activities, the output is project network diagrams. So this activity or this skill that I just showed you how to do is what you're doing when you do the process called sequence activities. That's one of the time management processes in the planning column on your matrix chart, right, on the back of your student guide. So building these project network diagrams is part of sequence activities. And then when you go into develop project schedule, that process, develop project schedule adds on the activity durations. Because remember, look at the back of your student guide. You've got sequence activities, and you've got estimate activity. I forget, is it resources first, and then activity durations, and then lastly after that is develop schedule. And so when you get to develop schedule, you've already built this network diagram, and then we've added the resources and durations. And when I'm in develop schedule, now I'm figuring out, okay, here's my network diagram. And the sponsor told me they want this project done in 30 days. And I just did my network diagram and sequence activities, and it came out to 33 days as my critical path. So that tells me that I need to figure out how to get rid of 3 days on the schedule, right? I need to get rid of 3 days on the schedule. And so how do you do that? You do that one of two ways. I either crash or I fast track. When I crash a schedule, I add resources. So if we had a critical path that was 33 days long, after we did this network diagram, we say, oh, our pathway is 33 days long based on our activity durations and how we have things sequenced. And the sponsor says, nope, that's not going to work. You got to cut 3 days. You would say, well, Mr. Sponsor, I have two options for you. Without decreasing the scope, we could crash the schedule, which means I'm going to add resources. I'm going to add 2 more people on activity B. And that's going to take 3 days off. But guess what? It's going to cost you more money, Mr. Sponsor, because I got to pay these 2 new laborers. These 2 workers got to get a paycheck. So that's going to increase cost if I crash the schedule. But I can get it down to 30 days for you. The other option is I had planned to do activity B and C in sequence. B is done first, then sequence, then C is done next. But I could do them in parallel. I could do B and C at the same time, but it won't cost any more money, but it's going to increase risk to your schedule because now I had a valid reason for doing B first and then C second. Like, remember the example I gave you of carpeting a room and painting a room? You would normally paint first, then carpet second, but there's no physical reason you can't do them at the same time. You could be painting the room and carpeting it at the same time with 2 different crews. But that will increase risk to the schedule because now I've got the risk of paint spilling on the carpet or the carpet crew leaning up against the wet paint wall and messing that up. So this is going to increase risk. So I can either crash the schedule, which is going to get it down to 30 days and cost you some money, or I can fast track the schedule, which I can get it down to 30 days, but it will cost you some added risk, which ultimately could turn into costing money, right? So those are the 2 things. And that's what we do when we develop the schedule. So we get it, and then further on, the critical path is where we're most concerned about risk, right? Why are we most concerned about risk on the critical pathway? We haven't covered risk management yet, but just thinking logically, why am I most concerned about risk on the critical path? Why am I most concerned about risk on the critical path? Right, because I like the way you put that. That's pretty basic, because that's what will mess the project up the most. Why? There is no float. There's no wiggle room in those critical path activities, right? Everything's got to start on a certain day. Everything's got to have the exact right duration, finish on the right day in order for us to finish this project on time. So those activities are very critical. What if I have a worker that calls in sick, right? And he works on a critical path activity. Bam, I just pushed my schedule out by a day, for example, because of a sick employee. What if an employee calls in one day sick on an activity that has 20 days afloat? Does that going to impact my schedule? No, it won't mess it up. So I am not concerned about risk on, well, I am concerned about risk, but not near as much on non-critical path activities as I am on critical path ones. So it's a way that we go and plan for, risk planning. That's where I'm most concerned about it. So that's kind of the big ball of wax, why you do this network diagramming in sequence activities, and then you refine it during develop project schedule, and you use it for various things. You use it to plan out risk, and we're also going to use it to come up with the budget later, which is in cost management, we're going to talk about next. So that is all very important stuff, and you got to have this schedule to do it. So we're building the project schedule. Rich, I know that was a long, detailed thing, but your question was great, and it spurred, a diatribe for me there, because I realized that I needed to connect the dots for everyone. So does that make sense as to why you do that, and do you have any other questions on it? Okay, you are welcome. Yeah, making the connection, man, that is critical to passing the test. A lot of PMP training curriculums don't connect the dots for you. And that's where people, get their butt kicked on the exam. They may know, I got all the ITTOs memorized, the inputs, tools, techniques, and outputs, and I know this chart down cold. But give me a scenario-based question. Say, well, you've got this scenario, and what should you do next? Well, I don't have the dots connected in my brain, so I can't make the connection with what I should do next. And that's why I like to spend time making sure that you get the flow and go back over the review of the processes like I did when we first started tonight, to help keep your mind thinking on the process data flow, because that's how you're going to recall all this stuff and pass that exam.